One to please stand as we open in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your blessings, for your guidance, for your continuous love. We thank you for enabling us to all be present here this afternoon at the last debate of round one of the intersecondary schools debating competition. Lord, we thank you for guiding our young people here today, for allowing them to choose the path of debating, and for allowing our judges, our media personnel, our assistants in this competition to be present and be willing to take part in such a great endeavor, which is debating at the secondary schools level. Father, we ask that the proceedings this afternoon proceed with no hiccups and that we all have a fruitful experience here. In your name we pray. Please be seated. So, good afternoon once again. I've had to wear the hat of pastor in these debates, which is not my normal designation. So I hope I prayed to the satisfaction of everyone and of God this afternoon. My name is Trudy Christian. I'm the organizer of the Intersecondary Schools Debating Competition. And as I mentioned, this afternoon is the last afternoon of debate in round one. So this week has seen several competitive debates and even a very competitive friendly debate, and we are rounding up the experience of round one this afternoon. So I'd like to welcome the schools present for debate this afternoon. The Wesley High School and the Convent High School, welcome to you. To debaters, teachers, welcome to you all. This afternoon, we will be engaging in a debate on the topic, Dominican students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should be obligated to return home for a set period after they have completed their studies. So this is the topic up for debate this afternoon. I will briefly give you the rules of this competition so that we are all aware of what is expected, although I know for many you have heard these rules numerous times before, so you may be well aware. But just to repeat, in this competition, we are going to have the first speaker of each team, the proposing team and the opposing team, speak for an allotted 10 minutes. So the first speaker of the proposition and the first speaker of the opposition are allowed 10 minutes in which to deliver their arguments. If the speakers exceed the time allotted in excess of 1 minute, then they can be penalized by the judges with a 5-point penalty. So that's the rule. 10 minutes for the first speakers, and if they exceed that over a minute, they can be penalized by the judges with a 5-point penalty. The second speakers of both the proposing and the opposing teams will be given 7 minutes maximum in which to deliver their arguments. When we have heard these prepared presentations of the students, we then have a 5-minute break in which the students prepare their rebuttals. And we come back for the rebuttal segment with a 3-minute rebuttal, 3-minute maximum from our lead of the proposition and 3-minute maximum from the lead of the opposing side. When that is done, the judges will retire to deliberate and then return quickly with our results. During that time, I will engage the audience in a discussion on the moot, but not a discussion on the debaters and their performance this afternoon. Then we'll, of course, have the announcement of the results when the judges return, and we will conclude at that time. So that's the order. The general rule for the audience, though, is that I ask that you remain silent during the arguments of the students. Please ensure that your cell phones are on silent so that there are no interruptions for the students, and to please withhold any applause or outbursts until the students have completed their arguments. So allow the students to deliver with no interruptions. So these are the general rules. And let's move on to introduce the judges for this afternoon's debate. So we have with us 3 judges who will be deciding who is the winner in this afternoon's debate and who is the runner-up. Our judges are Janae Jackson. Janae, you can wave to the audience so they know who you are. Janae Jackson holds a bachelor's degree in law from UWI Mona and a legal education certificate from the Norman Manley Law School. I welcome this afternoon to the judging panel, Ms. Janae Jackson. Mr. Brenton Hilaire is the agency manager. Brenton, wave. Brenton Hilaire is the agency manager of Sagicor and the president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce. He's a competent communicator from the Toastmasters Club, and he's a certified John T. Maxwell speaker. So I welcome this afternoon Mr. Brenton Hilaire to our judging panel. And the third judge, Mr. Cody Jajak. Cody, yes, is waving, is a lifelong STEM enthusiast, and he's the lead mentor of the Dominica robotics team. He's a product of the Dominica State College Literary and Debating Society, and he has represented Dominica twice in the Windward Islands debating competition. So I welcome Cody Jajak to our panel of judges here this afternoon. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, no boys, men, ladies and gentlemen, this is our judging panel. Now let me introduce our debaters. Debating this afternoon on the proposing side from the Wesley High School, Neola Aline. I will call you now to come forward to take your seat. And Neola is a third former at the Wesley High School. I call her now to take her seat. And her second speaker, Deanna Mosley. We welcome third former Neola, fourth former Deanna. We welcome the Wesley High School to the front for this debate. You can clap. as we welcome our debaters. So Neola Aline, third former Wesley High School, and Deanna Mosley, fourth former from the Wesley High School. From the Convent High School, on the opposing side of this argument this afternoon, we have Miss Nia Williams, a fourth former, and Miss Therese Leblanc, also a fourth former. So I welcome Team CHS to the front in this debate. So our proposing team is from the Wesley High School. Our opposing team is from the Convent High School. Let me remind, or I have not said it for the afternoon, but let me say for the first time to the students, the timekeeper for this debate will be seated in front of you. She will give the alert when there is 1 minute left by raising a sign. Timekeeper, you can show them. And when your time is up, she will also indicate so with a raise of her sign. So this is the timekeeper, so make sure that you pay attention to the timekeeper. Okay, so we have everything in place. We've introduced our debaters. We've introduced our judges. Audience, are you ready? Are you sure? All right. Debaters, are you ready? Okay. I want to hear that a bit stronger. You know, I want to make sure you all are ready. Let me give the topic one more time, just so that we are all clear. Our topic up for debate this afternoon: Dominican students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should be obligated to return home for a set period after they have completed their studies. So we are ready. Everyone has confirmed they are ready. So let's start this debate. I'll call on the first speaker from the proposing team from the Wesley High School, Miss Neola Aline. Miss Aline, you have 10 minutes in which to deliver your argument. So let's welcome her to the podium.
Honorable judges, Madam Moderator, organizers, my valuable opponents, and my honorable colleague, good afternoon. Today I stand before you to propose the topic, Dominica students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should be obligated to pursue should be obligated to return home for a set period after they completed their studies. In solidarity with my colleague and using solid evidence, I promise to convince you that students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should be obligated to return home for a set period after they completed their studies. Permit me to define some keywords in the moot. According to the Collins Dictionary, a government is defined as the group of people with the authority to rule a country or state. According to the same source, assistance is defined as the act of helping or supporting someone, and higher education is the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction at universities and colleges. The Oxford Dictionary defines overseas as connected with foreign countries, especially those separated from your country by sea or ocean. Obligated means having a moral or legal duty to do something, while set means fixed or established by authority or agreement. This topic therefore suggests that Dominican students who receive financial aid by the governing body of the country to pursue tertiary education should be required morally or legally to return home to Dominica for a stipulated period of time after completing their studies. My partner and I strongly propose that these students should in fact return home for a set period. I will elaborate on the points that students should return home to improve intellectual capital and to contribute to economic growth, while my partner will present on the fact that it is the students' national responsibility to ensure a return on government's investment, and that their return is an expression of gratitude. Madam Moderator, if our Dominican students who receive government assistance are obliged to return home for a period of time, this means this will subsequently lead to an improvement in intellectual capital. Madam Moderator, permit me to delve into the stark reality facing our nation. According to the recent data from the Ministry of Education, over the past decade, an alarming 65% of students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education abroad did not return to contribute their skills to our nation. Dr. Justin Ram, Director of the Economics Department at the Caribbean Development Bank, explains in a 2021 regional stakeholder consultation, open quote, when we look at data, many of the countries in the region have lost as much as 70% of their labor force with more than 12 years of schooling. That is to say, 70% of our population that we have schooled to tertiary education has left our shores, close quote. When we look around in our country and in the region by extension, the brain drain phenomenon is a genuine concern. More and more of our professionals simply are leaving our shores, and many of those who have gone to study, they do not return home. For Dominica, this translates into missed opportunities for advancement and an exacerbation of our skills shortages in key sectors. My esteemed opponents, when our students engage in academic pursuits across borders, they are transformed into professionals equipped with the knowledge and skills demanded by global job market. All the doctors, lawyers, IT specialists, engineers, business professionals who would have gotten government assistance would be bringing back all they have learned right back to our shores to add value to our country, to help develop the nation and to enhance the overall quality of life for its citizens. Our beloved country would gain the talents and experiences who have acquired advanced education abroad. Let us take a moment to imagine a Dominica where our skilled professionals, educated with our resources, return home to contribute to our growth. Picture the innovation, the thriving industries, and the prosperity that could be ours. My most worthy opponents, would we want to lose that to other countries? Madam Moderator, we can only truly benefit if the government mandates that students who receive government assistance must return to Dominica for a set period. By doing so, we ensure that the education and skills acquired abroad are not lost to foreign nations, but are harnessed for the benefit for our local communities. Our country, with its unique challenges and opportunities, requires the expertise of its own citizens to propel it forward. Instead of brain drain, we will undeniably have brain gain, since skilled individuals will be bound to return to contribute to the country's development. Secondly, my worthy opponents, when our best and brightest minds choose to settle permanently in other countries, we lose not only their skills, but also the potential economic contributions they could make to our own society. A 2022 report by the World Bank indicates that countries experiencing a significant brain drain face a decline in economic growth. Madam Moderator, it is undisputed that education is a powerful catalyst for economic growth. According to economist Matthew Zhang in his 2023 article entitled, Education's Role in Economic Growth, open quote, education promotes economic growth and development in developed and developing countries. It is a driving force behind the expanding knowledge and innovation and productivity, all contributing to a nation's economic prosperity, close quote. With more educated people, the more we will thrive economically. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why some nations seem to thrive economically while others face continuous challenges? The answer lies not just in resources, but in the continuous challenges, but in the collective brain power of their citizens. Let us look at countries like Singapore and Malaysia with successful economic and educational models who have implemented similar policies without compromising individual freedom. Imagine a small island nation, Singapore, face a dilemma of losing its brightest minds. Picture how a simple policy of mandatory return after completing government-funded education transformed the nation's fate. Singapore's bond system requires a scholarship recipient to work in Singapore for 3 years after completing their studies abroad. This has played a crucial role in Singapore's rapid economic development. Singapore's leaders recognize early on that human capital is one of the most important drivers of economic growth, and they have invested heavily in developing their workforce to meet the needs of a rapidly changing global economy, and has mandated that those who benefit from these investments are legally bonded to the country for a set period. Madam Moderator, according to the case study Transforming Malaysia's Higher Education, Policies and Progress, a similar initiative led to an 80% return rate of government-sponsored students, significantly improving Malaysia's workforce capabilities and contributing to its economic resilience. In Dominica, if we continue to lose our human capital, our economy will continue to crumble. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I dare say that there should be the implementation of a mandatory return home policy for students who have received government assistance to help bolster the nation's intellectual capital through the contribution of their skills, knowledge, and expertise, and to boost our country's economy, thereby contributing to the well-being of our dear Dominica. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aline. And for the judges, her time was 9 minutes and 19 seconds. I'll now call on the first speaker from the opposing team, the Convent High School, Ms. Nia Williams, to the podium. She has 10 minutes in which to deliver her arguments. Ms. Williams?
Madam Moderator, judges, my worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I know it's a bit cool in the room today, but my teammate and I are about to bring the heat into this debate. We're going to prove to you why Dominican students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should not be obligated to return home for a set period. Rather, they should have completed their studies. Before I begin my substantive arguments, please allow me to define the elements which are crucial in this debate. Government assistance, as defined by Law Insider, is a grant, loan, or tax increment financing that results in a financial benefit from an entity of the government. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, higher education can be defined as education at a college or university where subjects are studied at an advanced level. And an obligation is the action of being forced to do something or feel that you must do something. Now that I have clarified these terms, I quote the Antiguan Prime Minister Gaston Brown, who in a June 2022 news conference said, and I quote, "My government will be eliminating the need for bonding. There are many who speak about a brain drain, but we'd rather people leave our shores qualified, go abroad and make monies rather than they stay here uneducated and poor. We rather educate them, and if they can't find jobs here, we create the opportunity for them to find jobs abroad. And at some point, they will return to our shores and even bring superior skills." End quote. The Antiguan Prime Minister hit all 3 points which I intend to address. That firstly, the government does not have the institutional capacity nor the willpower to police bonded students. Secondly, obligating students to return home for a set period after completing their studies will inhibit global opportunities for them. And lastly, the government should focus on retention versus the return of newly acquired expertise. It is clear that the government does not have the institutional capacity nor the willpower to police bonded students. An examination of the revised Dominica Scholarship Act, Chapter 2804, has shown that there is zero reference about mandating students who receive scholarships from the government to return home following their studies. Though not legislated, there were earlier bonding practices through government policies. It required students studying abroad with government scholarships to return home at the end of their studies and to be employed by the government. If they did not return, they or their sureties would be required to pay back the value of the scholarships. For those who did return, if the government was unable to provide them with employment, they would be released from their bonds and be allowed to engage in private sector employment. Currently, there is no formal bonding policy being enforced. In a survey conducted by my club, the respondents indicated that only they were obligated to sign the contract for government assistance. There were no sureties involved. So, Madam Moderator, how does the government suggest to enforce the consequence of their bond contract? Unlike the countries like Guyana, which can legally place a contractual obligation stamp on their students' passports and force them to actually serve out their bonds, Dominica has no such recourse. Most recently, Honorable Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit himself, in a Dominica News Online article titled PM Talks Education, on December 14th, 2022, declared, and I quote, "I want to say to those of you who have been receiving scholarships to study overseas, with immediate effect, you will all be bonded. Everybody will be bonded." End quote. 2 years later, students are still not bonded. We need to ask the question, what happened to cause the collapse of the student bonding program? In today's context, we need to examine what percentage of students who study abroad would be bonded and whether it would have any significant impact on preventing brain drain. But I cannot give you those figures, Madam Moderator, because according to the Ministry of Education, they do not exist. Madam Moderator, I have referenced the Antiguan Prime Minister's stance on the brain drain argument and his preference of having students explore and broaden their capabilities abroad. Therefore, let me now expound on my second point, that obligating students to return home for a set period after completing their studies will inhibit global opportunities for Dominican students. Opportunities are essential for the development of a country's most important resource, their human resource. If students are bonded to the country, how are they able to get the timely training and experience that they need to be top in their fields? Madam Moderator, it is unfortunate but true that in the Commonwealth of Dominica, we often do not have the capacity or expertise to further develop the skills of our students. The best illustration of this issue is in sports. Our athletes who are trained down here often have to seek specialized training and sporting opportunities overseas. We are proud of our athletes, but we have to be proud from afar as they receive the necessary training for them to thrive. A bond limiting opportunities would be devastating to our graduates in all fields. Alec Athanase, Stéphane Pascal, and Thea Lafond are thriving unhindered overseas while making their country proud and bringing us due recognition. And let us not be afraid. Our Dominicans do give back. I bring your attention to the examples of Dr. Jarrell Joseph, who founded Carry Scholar, and Dr. Shyla Esprit, who founded Create Caribbean, both bondless from overseas. Our sister islands, the Honorable Gaston Brown, is indeed very correct. Which takes me to my third and final point. It is more important to focus on the retention over return. Madam Moderator, my opponents and I can agree on one thing. It is indeed important for students to contribute to the nation that invested in them. However, where I see things differently is on the issue of obliging students to return home, who otherwise would want to go on to pursue other academic studies or professional opportunities. This was the problem for Trinidad and Tobago scholar, Dr. Ryan Lalu, who according to a May 17, 2022 article in the Guardian newspaper titled Court Blocks Education Ministry from Taking Action Against Former Scholarship Awardee, Dr. Lalu informed Trinidad's Ministry of Education of the opportunity and was told he had to apply for a deferral of service, only to have his application rejected after he had already begun the training. Thus, Dr. Lalu challenged a February 2014 policy, which he claimed was irrational, unfair, and unreasonable, as it prevented him from pursuing specialist training, which was not available in his country and required more time to complete. In the end, Madam Moderator, he had to go to the court to get an injunction and halt the ministry from taking action against him for breach of his scholarship contract, and to compel him to return to the country to start his bond. To my opponents, instead of mandating that students return, notably to no job acquisition or security, shouldn't the government focus on creating an environment that allows them to retain graduates, not because they are forced, but because they want to return to what they were promised, or even better, to enticing opportunities? Madam Moderator, Graduates who choose to return of their own free will want to return to a thriving economic environment, because even if a bond is implemented, students can either try to circumvent the bond limitations or just leave the country as soon as the bond period is up. The government's modern-day indentured servants. The government needs to encourage voluntary return. Let us invest in a high-quality education, such as the UWI Global Campus we are standing in today. Let us offer research grants so our students can research and broaden their scope of knowledge and network with one another. And let us develop a strong job market with internship programs and job placement services and entrepreneurship ventures. Madam Moderator, an economy with opportunities will thrive. Just wait and see. And we will need no bonds. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Your time for the judges was 10 minutes and 59 seconds. I'll now call on the second speaker from the proposing team, the Wesley High School, Ms. Deanna Mosley, to the podium. Ms. Mosley has 7 minutes in which to deliver her arguments. Ms. Mosley?
Good afternoon to all. I recognize that protocol has already been established by my esteemed colleague, so I shall move right into my task of reinforcing our agreement that Dominica students who received government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should be obligated to return home after a set period after completing their studies. My colleague has already eloquently outlined that the mandatory return policy will improve intellectual capital and lead to economic growth. And I will now prove to you that it is the student national responsibility to ensure a return on government investments and serve as an expression of gratitude. Madam Moderator, we all share the national responsibility as citizens of our great nation. Our government, recognizing the pivotal role education plays in the progress and development of our society, has taken a monumental step by providing assistance to thousands of students pursuing tertiary education year after year. According to statistics from Ministry of Education in 2019, 4,000 students in various fields receive government assistance in pursuing higher education overseas, amounting to $6.6 million. In 2020, an additional of 578 students received assistance to further their education to various learning institutions abroad, contributing to an increase of $22.2 million. In 2021, the government of Dominica actually paid tuition, housing, in some cases tuition, only amounting to $10.9 million. Ladies and gentlemen, it is evidence that the government is pumping millions and millions of dollars into funding education overseas, recognizing the importance of education to economic development, social stability, citizen empowerment, and upward mobility. This initiative is not just an investment in individual futures, but a commitment to the collective well-being of our nation. According to senior official in the Ministry of Education, when government invests resources in providing scholarships and financial assistance to students, we should ensure that the country receives a return on this investment by having educated individuals contribute to the nation's growth and development through their work. Students who have been supported by the government have responsibility to contribute back to the nation that invested in their education. Madam Moderator, we bask in the pride in the significant stride towards education empowerment. I would like to emphasize the importance of reciprocating this generosity with a sense of duty and patriotism. Ladies and gentlemen, patriotism is not confined as waving a flag, wearing a Creole dress, or eating Creole food during independence season. It is the embodiment of a commitment to the well-being of the nation. Our national anthem calls us to do the right, be firm, be fair. Returning home is tangible manifestation of this commitment to be firm and fair. We should embrace the national responsibility with open hearts and willing minds to see a bigger picture beyond personal aspirations and acknowledge the role that we all play in collective success of our nation. Additionally, Madam Moderator, when a government uses taxpayers' money and funds from the government purse to invest in a student education overseas, the onus is on that student to return to the country and express our gratitude for the government's investment. Would it really hurt to demonstrate our gratitude by rendering service for a set period, but to our generous donors? Madam Moderator, my most worthy opponents may argue that this may restrict the students' freedom and even hinder their ability to make independent career choices. Madam Moderator, this call to return home should not be seen as a restriction, but as a privilege and an opportunity to say thank you. Our government is not obligated to provide financial assistance. Previously, many students took loans to finance their tertiary education, and their families' collateral would be in jeopardy. My dear opponents, the long and short of your agreement here today is that students who receive government assistance should seek opportunities elsewhere and not return home to work. With that said, what are we truly teaching our young people? My most worthy opponents, do you know the story of the 10 lepers in Luke chapter 17? Are we teaching our young people to be ungrateful, like the 9 lepers who got healed and did not turn their backs to say thanks? My worthy opponents, returning home is a way of saying thank you and recognition of the role of that country has played in facilitating the students' education and personal development. It is a way of demonstrating appreciation for the educational support, financial assistance, and opportunities provided by the government. It is a way of saying thank you, not only through words, but through actions that contribute to the progress, prosperity, and the well-being of the nation. This not only adds a personal touch, but also a moral dimension to the argument, emphasizing the reciprocal nature of the relationship between individuals and their country, giving back to the community that has invested in your personal and professional development. Ladies and gentlemen, do not get me wrong. We are not asking for a life sentence where you must remain in Dominica forever, because we know all too well of some of the challenges and opportunities which exist. However, we are proposing here today is for the recipients of government's assistance to render to Caesar what is Caesar's. They owe it to the state to come back home. Come back home to ensure that our nation benefits from the intellectual capital we have invested in. Come back home to help build our economy. Come back home as it is your national responsibility to ensure returns on investment. Come back home as an expression of gratitude for the assistance received. Come back home to serve for a set period of time to build a prosperous and sustainable nation. We rest our case.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. For the judges, her time was 7 minutes and 27 seconds. We'll now go along to the second speaker from the opposing team from the Convent High School, Ms. Therese LeBlanc. She will have 7 minutes in which to deliver her arguments. Ms. LeBlanc.
Good morning to the moderator, judges, my worthy opponents, and the audience. My teammate has already outlined a superb argument exploring the topic, Dominican students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should be obligated to return home for a set period after they have completed their studies. I am here now to educate you on 2 more reasons as to why bonding students should not be done. Firstly, phantom scholarships are impractical and should not constitute the basis of a bond. Secondly, governments which seek to invest in their country's future through bonding must first demonstrate practicality when trying to invest in their students. To start, I must bring to your attention the existence of phantom scholarships. These are instances in which the government promises to fund the education of students, but they do not stay true to this agreement or pay the respective universities that the students attend. Government assistance contracts play a significant role in a country's self-investment for the future. Phantom scholarships create a situation where the students receiving government assistance, especially in the form of tuition, either find themselves paying a sizable amount of their university fees out of their own pockets, which was not part of the original agreement, or they are barred from classes, kicked out from the school, or denied their diplomas. In cases where the government does not provide the assistance that it has promised, the students are the ones left to deal with the consequences. Let us look at the examples of what happened with the Midwestern and Grambling universities in a trilogy of articles published from August to October 2023 on Dominica News Online. We shall be focusing on 2 of these articles. Article 1. 2 American universities demand payment from the government of Dominica for outstanding tuition. And the second article, government begins payment of outstanding tuition to 2 universities amidst ultimatum. The first article addresses the seriousness of the situation, stating, the Texas-based pupils disclose that failure to resolve the outstanding payments not only hinders their educational progress, but also jeopardizes their visa statuses, potentially leading to termination. Hence, they feel compelled to bring this issue to the public's attention for a swift resolution. In the second article, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt was quoted for his response to the situation, saying, the same way you can criticize when not paying is the same way you can post when you graduate and you walk in your high heels and all fees paid. You have no loan. You should post the same thing. I feel the need to stress on the fact that the students' fees being paid is part of a contract for government-assisted students. The students are within their own rights to criticize the government for not upholding their end of the bargain, and they do not have to praise them for doing what they are contractually required to do. In case my words were not clear enough, let me further illuminate them for you. As stated by our Minister of Education, Octavia Alfred, everybody looking as if it's a scholarship they have. But if your letter says you're going on a 2-year program, the letter says the government will cover your tuition and your household and living expenses for 1 year. You have to shake up your pampalam and look for you too. So tell me, Madam Moderator, why should those receiving government assistance, full, partial, phantom, or otherwise, be bonded to the country despite the fact that the government clearly does not have the resources to meet their commitments while the students are studying? If a government cannot uphold their side of the bargain in a bond, then the setting of the bond becomes meaningless. This is the case that we are dealing with in the Commonwealth of Dominica, and as such, no bond should exist. Secondly, a country should practice practicality. A government cannot expect to reap the rewards of having a bonding system without keeping their side of the bargain. You cannot eat your cake and have it too. The government's track record does not inspire confidence in a bonding system. How many students have come back to Dominica to fulfill their bond only to be deserted by the government. I cannot give you those statistics, Madam Moderator, because the government has not kept track of its graduates. And how many are left with no way of earning an income with a degree in the subject they studied abroad? In a survey conducted by my club, we found that many of the past return graduates expected to receive employment upon their return, but were bitterly disappointed when they realized that, and I quote, "The government didn't even know I was here until my mother called a minister to get me a job." Madam Moderator, doesn't the government lose out on their sought-after expertise if the bond is not maintained? How are the students supposed to support themselves when none of the employment promise is provided in the first place? As you can tell, both parties do suffer due to the lack of preparation of one side, but more so the students. It might not be clear to you as yet, so picture yourself as a student, eager to come back to the country after studying abroad for many years, only to return to a country that did not make the provisions that they said they would. Now, Madam Moderator, allow me to fixate your attention on the list of national priority training areas, which the government revised in 2012, stating that they were willing to assist people who desired jobs in the fields registered, as they were supposedly needed in our country. Well, they must still be needed, Madam Moderator, as the list has not been revised since. Additionally, though the list may appear to be extensive and even includes fields like bomb disposal under law and national security, many of the jobs are not and cannot be supported in the country at this time. Moreover, many of the students return overqualified and our government cannot afford to pay them their rightful salaries. This creates a false sense of security for the students who in some cases spend their own money pursuing a degree that will leave them jobless upon return. The fact that the government does not uphold their end of the bargain shows their lack of concern and interest in the future of the country that they run, and this has and continues to deter many students, especially the youth, from returning to help to improve Dominica's economy. I will end with this quote. "A scholarship is not just a financial reward, but a recognition of one's hard work and dedication." Clearly, hard work and dedication of students is not valued in Dominica, because these words are not true here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leblanc. Your time for the judges was 7 minutes and 14 seconds. So this concludes the prepared argument segment of the debate, and the debaters now have to prepare their rebuttals. And before I retire to give them some quiet to do so, let me just inform our audience of our judging criteria, particularly for our online listeners. Of course, I did not say, but I should have said good afternoon to our listeners on DBS Radio and on Dominica News Online. So the judging criteria includes okay, I don't have all the categories, but analysis of proposition, soundness of points, audibility and clarity, posture and poise, and command of material. I almost remembered all of them. I just needed a little starter. So this is what the students will be judged on for their prepared arguments, and then the rebuttal comes next. Let me also acknowledge our sponsors for this competition. We have many sponsors for the intersecondary schools debating competition, and I am very pleased that they have chosen to come on board with this initiative because it is one that I believe in. I'm organizing it, so I believe in it very strongly. So DOMLAC is sponsoring for all to know an award for the 4 most memorable orators throughout the competition. So that will be sponsored by DOMLAC at the finals. Lindomat is a sponsor, Fine Foods Inc., KFC, Q95 Radio, DBS Radio, UE Global Campus, Flow, Freeman Consulting Group LLC, Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited, Dominica News Online, Vibian TV, Lovely Things, Finance Focus, alias Française de la Dominique, The Watering Can, Dr. Joshua Lloyd and Mrs. Corinthia Lloyd, Vive Eye Care, Crazy Carrot, National Cooperative Credit Union. Of course, we are also supported by the Dominica State College Literary and Debating Society. So our Literary and Debating Society students are present and facilitating this debate. And of course, also we collaborate with the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Planning, Vocational Training, and National Excellence. So for the remainder of the allotted time, I will give the debaters some quiet, and I ask the audience to do the same so that they may prepare their rebuttals. So I asked for some silence, and then we automatically got a song track. to in the background, so the silence, didn't really happen. But I think our 5 minutes have been surpassed. And I know the students always need a little extra time for that rebuttal. This is the crunch time, so, I try to delay a little. But I think the 5 minutes, are long gone. So we're going to proceed with the rebuttal segment. Remember, the rebuttals, the maximum time allotted to the students is 3 minutes to deliver their rebuttals. So we start with the rebuttal from the proposing team, the Wesley High School, and the leader of that team, Miss Neola Aline. I now call her to the podium to deliver her rebuttal. Miss Aline.
Good afternoon once again. I rise to present our rebuttal on this topic, and by the end of my presentation, I promise to convince you without a shadow of a doubt that Dominican students who receive government assistance for hire abroad should return home for a set period. My most worthy opponents mentioned lack of job opportunities in Dominica. While we understand that this may be so, we still believe it is students' national responsibility to give back to the country. If the government invests in you, then you owe it to the government and the state to come back and contribute to nation building. Come back with your skills and knowledge. Develop the country. Were it not for the government, these students probably could not even afford to study in the first place. So my friends, what are you saying? Is if the Convent High School gives a scholarship to one of your teachers, it is the right for that teacher to decide when she finishes her studies that she should come back to teach at Wesley High School? Magwesa. Salaries and wages in Dominica are unattractive or low, as my worthy opponents mentioned. Sometimes, money is not all. You may think that the salary is higher, but when you think of the cost of living in foreign countries, you had better come back to work. Some people have to work 2 to 3 jobs to pay their rent and to meet their basic needs. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have your personal money, then you are free to make that choice. You can go wherever you want to study, and you can come back if you want. But if it's the government that has to give you that opportunity, you need to return home to show your gratitude. The state needs us. We must not be ungrateful. My worthy opponents mentioned restriction on personal freedom and choice. Again, personal freedom and choice can only be considered when it is your personal money paying for your own school. You pay for what you want to study, and you go wherever you want to work. When it is your taxpayers' money which is funding your education, personal choice should not even be a discussion. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aline. For the judges, her time was 2 minutes and 25 seconds. I now call on the lead speaker from the Convent High School, the opposing team, Ms. Nia Williams, to the podium to deliver her rebuttal. Ms. Williams.
Good morning once again. Afternoon. To the judges, audience, and Madam Moderator. I am here to show you today why the proposition has lost this debate. And I will show you right now. My teammate and I are still firmly standing on the point that Dominican students who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should not be obligated to return home for a set period after they have completed their studies. According to the proposition, it is mandatory that students who study overseas have a national responsibility to fulfill their bond. But, Madam Moderator, this is simply not true. As I refer back to the example of Dr. Jarrell Joseph and her many contributions, as well as Shyla Esprit, who are overseas and still contributing through their very well investments. Also, on the topic of phantom scholarships, my proposition has mentioned that there is an investment that students should make. There are many ways to invest in students, Madam Moderator, not just through payment, but like I referenced back to the sports industry and how they have made plenty contributions and due recognition to Dominica. Madam Moderator, the government did not keep their promise. Referring back to phantom scholarships, how could students, referring back to investments, how could students even invest in their government if the government does not invest back in them? They do not give back. They do not promise. The second speaker from the proposition declared that there is many investment from the government in many monies given back. May I return to the quote of Antiguan Prime Minister Gaston Brown, who declared that eliminating the need for bonding would no longer require the need of brain drain. In the end, Madam Moderator, it is the students' responsibility to know whether they should or they should not come back to a country that does not even believe in them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. For the judges, her time was 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, to our listeners through our media platforms, we have now concluded the debate, and it is now the judges' turn to do some hard work. So let us congratulate our students. Let us give them a round of applause. I'll ask the judges to retire so that the audience can engage in a discussion on the topic. So the judge's assistant, can you please escort the judges so they can deliberate out of the room? And at this time, I'll ask the students to return to their peers to take the pressure off them. Front stage, we will call you back when the results are ready. But the proposing team from the Wesley High School, Miss Aline and Miss Deanna Mosley, once again, a round of applause to them. You can rejoin your peers. And opposing team from the Convent High School, Miss Nia Williams and Miss Therese Leblanc, you can rejoin your peers. So, debate time is over. Now, audience, it's your time. So, we had a very interesting mood. Well, I felt it was interesting at hand that Dominicans who receive government assistance to pursue higher education overseas should be obligated to return home for a set period after they have completed their studies. I really want some engagement from the students who are present, both from the Convent High School and from the Wesley High School. I want some engagement from them on the topic. First of all, So I'll be throwing out some questions, and this discussion segment, I do have some prizes for participants who are brave and participate from our student body here. We do have some prizes from the Crazy Carrot for our brave participants. So the question is, should Dominicans return home if they've received government assistance for a set period? First of all, I want to know what would be a fair set period, do you think, if you agree with the moot? What would be a fair set period to require someone to return home if they've received government assistance? Do we have any thoughts on that? So if you're in agreement with the moot that Dominican students who receive government assistance should return home for a set period, what would that set period look like? Does anybody want to engage with me on that? Yes. 1 second, we have a mic. Don't be scared of the mic.
Personally, I think like at least a year and 6 months.
A year and 6 months. Why you came up with that very specific time frame? A year and 6 months, why?
Probably like, okay, like depends on what you go and study, like let's say like business. Why don't you come back to your country and like start developing a business? Okay, you start developing your business, and then in that year and 6 months, you can like put stuff in place, like different investments, and you can like go to like different people to invest into that company that you want to build, and then later on, you're going to have a business where you can employ people in that country.
Okay, so you're thinking of creating employment, for people who come home. Okay, point taken. The young lady next to you, her hand was up as well. You changed your mind because of the mic? Why? Okay, speak without the mic. And you know what I'll do? I'll repeat what you say. What time? What is your set period? About a year. Okay, so I noticed the set periods that we have in mind, at least from these two young ladies, are pretty short. I feel a year and 6 months, pretty short. Yes, I have another person, another young lady wanting to contribute at the back. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I was saying that maybe 5 years or something, because if you think about it, because of the bond between like the student and the government, they should be able to like really give back to the government. Because I find like, let's say a year and 6 months, what can you really do in that 6 months, especially in the period, the way the country is in? What can you really do? Plus, can you even find well-paying jobs to even get yourself back up? Because the government has been paying everything for you. What really have you been doing, if you understand what I mean? Because there is no really like job, employment to really keep yourself sustainable.
Okay. Anybody wants to add to what she said, or anybody disagrees with her? Do we have a debate in the audience? Yes. Yes, her hand was up.
I disagree with that time frame. I disagree with the moot, but if you were to come back, I feel like you would have to take probably about 5 years. Not 5 years, sorry. Around 7 to 10 years. That seems like a long time, but to make waves in Dominica, to get your name established, like let's say you're in the field of law, there are many lawyers in Dominica at this time. So if you went to study law and you come back, you would have to establish your chambers. You would have to do case upon case and, build a name for yourself. So if you were here for, let's say, 8 years, you would be a well-known lawyer here, and you could go to another country in the region, let's say Barbados, and you would be known as a very successful lawyer from Dominica, and that way people would know you and people would know your country. So you will still be kind of bringing recognition to your country, and at the same time you would have been giving back to Dominica for that time frame you stated.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to look for my prize. 1 second. distribute. I'm going to give her a prize from Crazy Carrot for her contribution, because she really justified what she had to say. So thank you for that. She's saying 5 to 7 years to really get your name out there. That leads me to another aspect of the argument, something that I heard. Do you really have to be present in Dominica to contribute to Dominica? I heard that coming from the opposition. People who are not in Dominica, they don't live in Dominica, but they contribute to Dominica quite well. So what is the view on that from the audience? Do you really have to come back to Dominica for a set period in order to make a contribution felt to Dominica? I see Bijou has her hand up, although she's the one passing around the mic. Bijou, so what do you think?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I actually believe that you can contribute abroad. So in Convent's argument, they stated that they gave an example of Miss Dr. Schuyler, and she has made a very good contribution while being in UWI Mona with Create Caribbean and conducting the internship online and doing everything from a virtual perspective. So I believe that a lot of past people can contribute without being physically in Dominica. It's just whether or not they have the urge to do it or the motivation. So it depends on them at the end of the day if they want to do it, but it is very possible.
Thank you, Bijou. And Bijou is with Create Caribbean, so I think she felt that point very strongly as it related to Create Caribbean. Bijou, from Crazy Carrot, for defending, your institution as well, and the ability of a Dominican abroad to contribute. And Bijou mentioned something very interesting, I must say, remotivation. Is the person motivated to give back? And maybe I can engage you in that aspect of the conversation. Do you feel, so this is another question, that if someone is bonded, which is it's essentially what the moot is asking. If someone is bonded and they return to Dominica for that set period, would that bond lower their motivation or their drive? Is that necessity of them coming home that is in their contract that they have signed for their scholarship? Does that put a damper on their motivation? What do you think? Do you think that curtails some of their freedom? I heard that word mentioned as well in the debate. So what do you think? Yes. You ready for the mic now? Okay, that's good. Now we get in there.
Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I would say, for example, if someone went to study medicine or study to be a cardiovascular surgeon, like they would come back down and like help in the hospital, and they would like be motivated to educate persons.
Go ahead.
They would be like more motivated to educate persons and convince them to go and study, so that Dominica would have more skilled person in that field to help our sick people.
So if they come back, if they're home, they will encourage other people to pursue education and come back to help. That's your feeling. Okay. From Crazy Carrot, Bijou, can you please bring her? Sorry, Bijou, I have you going back and forth. We'll have to get a stipend for Bijou. Yes. And I want to recognize her. She took part in the inter-secondary schools debating competition last year, and she's contributing to the discussion this year. Let us hear your thoughts.
So while I do agree, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Let me start. While I do agree that it might depend on the field, I feel like the students who are bonded and they do return, they might feel a bit, like they might lose motivation because they feel that they are limited to Dominica and that they cannot go elsewhere. That they're saying that they can only stay in Dominica, and even if their aspiration would be to do something in another country or another country that has like the specific thing that they're looking for, they feel that they can only stay in Dominica, and thus they'll feel like, well, if I can't do exactly what I want to do, why try? You know? Honestly, it depends on the student.
So you agree with the fact that it would dampen their, their spirits?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think I saw Sasha's hand up. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to first start by saying I think we can all agree that Dominica has seen a significant decline in its GDP over the past years. And I think that a major factor of this is the fact that when a lot of people receive that tertiary education, they go abroad or they stay abroad and they do not come back. I personally feel like when the people do come back, I don't think it will make them lose motivation. If anything, I think it might be a grace period for them to adjust in their field within their own home space where they are comfortable. Additionally, a lot of students who have studied abroad have complained about the fact that after they finished their tertiary education, it's like a difficult period to adjust to the working field overseas. So I feel like coming back here might, allow them to get acquainted with their job and get accustomed to their field. And if anything, it might motivate them more.
Okay. So you have an opposing view. Thank you for that, Sasha. I want to pose a question, though, to the adults in the room who may have left Dominica to study and have come back and are working in Dominica. What is your view on the topic? I am one such Dominican. I'll just mention that you get a lot of comments about why you came back now, why you didn't work overseas. So you get a lot of that. But I want to know from the other adult, from the people in the room who may have gone overseas to study and have chosen to return, what do you think about this topic?
Well, I think the topic is so multifaceted in terms of the responses you can give to it.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you have people who are bonded and who return to work and who contributed to their country. You also have people who are not bonded. They spent their own money, went overseas to study, and felt patriotic and wanted to come back and work in their country to contribute to their country. There were people who decided, I can do more for my country if I stay overseas. I can work, get a bigger salary, and be more engage in philanthropic programs like Dr. Shiloh, whoever they mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
They can do so much. There are lots of Dominicans who stay overseas, are employed overseas, continue their studies while they are overseas, and engage in programs in their country, in Dominica, that give back to the country. An interesting thing happened, though, from the days of bonding to modern times, which is just as we say the world is one village, it has happened as well to employment. Look at what happened to people during the coronavirus period, when they could stay home and work from home. They still contributed to their country from their homes. And in the modern world, your home could be anywhere. Anywhere. There are people who work in Dominica, who are present in Dominica, but they work for companies outside of Dominica.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They are not employed by Dominica, but they are in Dominica working for companies outside of Dominica. What they get in Dominica is just a salary, but they're not, which is important because that salary also contributes to national development. So the same way for people who work overseas, they are domiciled overseas, they earn a salary, but they also contribute to their country. With the internet now and people working from home, the boundaries of, where you're working for, what country you're working from, who you're working for, who are you contributing to, whose capacity are you improving, whose human resource are you enriching? It's a very complex question now in today's world. So we have to be very careful when we say, well, Dominicans overseas are not contributing to their country,
mm-hmm.
or people who are overseas and say, well, I want to stay there and not, and So it's a two-way street right now. It's a more complex question, and is one that has to be viewed in context of the profession, the career path, of the do we need a lot of more lawyers? Do we need a lot more agriculturalists? Do we need more economists? Do we need more doctors or nurses? We have nurses here who are saying, I want to go to greener pastures. And we have foreign people in the medical field who are coming to work in Dominica. So we cannot really be narrow-sighted with this whole topic. It's one that is, I think, a little more complex. Thank you.
Very diverse. Thank you for that. I'd like to ask my assistants. One, there's some drinks that we should distribute at this time, and also the judge's assistant. Can you please check on the judges, as we need to keep them checked to make sure that we have our results delivered efficiently. So our drinks and our judges, please. Okay, so I have someone else. Yes, can you bring him the mic, please, wanting to contribute to this discourse? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sorry. I first would want to say that I had no idea what this young lady was saying. But it means that there are still independent voices in Dominica, independent thinkers, and which is refreshing. Sometimes I'm worried about that as a Dominican. And let me speak from one who went to study and was bonded. I went to study agricultural engineering a long time ago. I was bonded, I believe, for a period of 3 years with the government. I came back, got a job with the Ministry of Agriculture, but not at the level of a bachelor's degree, lower than that. And I remember during that short time of about 8 months in the Ministry of Agriculture, I was offered an employment with CADI in Jamaica for an agricultural engineer, and I was not allowed to go. I was not allowed to go to the interview with CADI, much less to go out of Dominica. But I have no regrets about that, because it gave me an opportunity to work elsewhere in Dominica besides the Ministry of Agriculture. I worked with the WASCO for a number of years, and then went back again with another government scholarship in a different field of engineering, which is construction. What I want to say here is that we all have a responsibility for national development to a very large extent. But it's also important that the environment that exists in the country facilitates and encourages persons to come back and to contribute. I think that is very much lacking. It's unfortunate about the level of discussion that comes from government ministers in this area. And we have to be true to ourselves, true to the country. I think the biggest drawback is not whether the student wants to contribute or should be contribute or should be obliged to contribute. The biggest drawback is whether the environment is being created to encourage innovation, to encourage development, to encourage the use of talent. And there are a few of us who would come back and still stay and contribute it in an arid environment. But how much more would the economy grow, would Dominica grow, if the environment was watered a bit more by policies, by the structures? And I think that's the crux of the matter, is whether the environment is suitable. I don't think the environment is very encouraging now, but hopefully those who come back, and the more independent thinkers we have, the more educated independent thinkers we have, the greater the chance of the tide being turned.
Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. I do understand that the judges are ready, so we will be getting our results. So I invite the judges to return to the room. And of course, you know, we've had this discussion. The debaters have presented their arguments, and the judges' task is now to weigh in from their side on what they believe. So I'll call on, before I call on the chief judge to deliver the critique, I just want to remind our listeners, our viewers, and you, the audience present this afternoon, that this debate competition takes place in multiple rounds. This is just round 1. The winners of this round will be progressing to round 2 in February, and the winners of round 2 will progress to the semifinals in March, and then the winners of the semis, 2 schools will win in the semifinal round, and they will proceed to the finals. The champions of this competition last year were students from the Alpha Waldron SDA Academy. So they enter the competition in round 2. So just to give you that background. So the winners of this afternoon's debate will proceed to round 2 in February. So the chief judge, Mr. Hillier, I invite you now to deliver your critique of the debate.
Good afternoon. This is a very great moment, I believe, because it's always a wonderful opportunity to see our youth engage in life skills. And I call it life skills because we often underestimate the power of public speaking. If you have to do research, you will often find that those who get promoted and those who make it in life are often the people who can speak well. So I want to first commend everyone who came up here and took part in this debate. You all are winners just by the nature of taking part in this competition. Now, in terms of general observations that came from the judging panel, we observed that research was done on both sides, and we want to commend you on that you could reference facts in some instances. We also recognize that there were instances of good use of vocal variety and posture at the front, and we want to encourage you to continue this, because speaking is not just about the words, but it's also about the movement of the body, the eye contact. Areas where we felt that some improvement could be made. We want to encourage you as best as possible to read less. So we often saw instances where the paper was kept up. And we believe that through practice, you would be in a position to keep the paper down and actually make more eye contact. Because when the paper is up, it actually restricts your body language to an extent. So you could be looking down at the paper, moving your hands, but then you're watching the paper, you're not really making that connection with your audience. In terms of eye contact is very important when it comes to public speaking. And we saw instances where it was a bit strained, so I felt a bit jealous at times because Trudy was getting all of the attention. You have a wide audience, so you have to find a way to move that connection around. We also wanted to say some few words on the rebuttal aspect of today's session. This is one of the most difficult aspects of speaking, and as we were discussing in our session with the judges, the reason why it's difficult is because of time. It's difficult when you have to confine so many words and so many experiences in a short space of time. So you have to be very effective and efficient with what you choose to say in that short space of time. And it may require you having to take notes while the other party is speaking, and from those notes, select what are the key points, and then organize it quickly from those key points. What should we really say? It's not about trying to say everything, it's trying to say the most important things from the discussions that occurred. But overall, we felt that it was a very good debate. We want to encourage you to continue your journey in speaking. Whether you win or whether you don't win, this is not the end to that journey. Public speaking is something that occurs every day in life, and there are several opportunities to try again or to try through a different avenue. So we want to say thank you to the debaters that gave us the pleasure of listening to them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hillier, for your critique and for really emphasizing the importance of public speaking, which is something that of course, I believe deeply. It would be remiss of me to not acknowledge my debating coach from 24 years ago, Mrs. Sorrento, yes, 24 years ago, who introduced, in a way, well, Mrs. Levy first chose me and then Mrs. Sorrento coached me, but, introduced me to this public speaking realm that I have not been able to leave. So, I want to acknowledge her here this afternoon. So the people who always hear me talking about debates and organizing debates, I want to recognize my coach. So we have the results this afternoon, and I would like to call back the students to their seats so that they can hear their fate based on the judge's decision this afternoon. So the team from the Wesley High School, the proposing team, Miss Arlene, I call you all back to the podium, not to the podium, to your seats. Miss Arlene and Miss Mosley from the Wesley High School. And from the Convent High School, Miss Williams and Miss LeBlanc, I call you back to your seats. Okay, so let me tell you now what the judges have decided. So I'll start with the decision that the judges made for Best Speaker. Best Speaker in this year's competition is decided by three categories of our judging criteria, and those are audibility and clarity, posture and poise, and command of material. So the judges believed that the following student excelled in these areas and is therefore awarded Best Speaker prize. And that person is Miss Therese LeBlanc from the Convent High School. So congratulations to Miss LeBlanc. She has copped the Best Speaker award. I'd like some assistance, please, with presenting the awards. Stand. Congratulations to her. Now, we have the scores as follows. One team has scored 486 points out of a possible total of 780. One team has scored 529 points out of a possible 780. I will start by calling the school who has scored 486 points, the runner-up in this afternoon's debate, the proposing side, the Wesley High School, and that means that the opposing side, the Convent High School, is the winner in this afternoon's debate. I will highlight, although this is not a prize category that we have an actual prize for this afternoon. It comes up in the finals, but I will highlight that the best rebuttal, based on what I see from the judges, the best rebuttal did come from the proposing side, that is the Wesley High School. So I want to also congratulate them for that. So can I have the presentation, please, for the Wesley High School, the runners-up in this afternoon's debate? So please stand. And the envelopes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ms. Neola Aline, first speaker of the Wesley High School. And Miss Deanna Mosley, who was the second speaker for the Wesley High School's team. I'd also like to call at this point on the principal and coach of Team Wesley High School, Mrs. Kushna Telemak Rabes, for her prize for assisting the students and yes, for assisting the students. So we have a prize for the coaches in each round who will not be coming to the next round. So Mrs. Rabes. Thank you. And just for information, so Mrs. Rabes jumped ship. So last year she was the coach for Team SMA. This year she's the principal and still coach for Team Wesley High School, and I want to really applaud her effort. As it relates to debating and public speaking, I can always call on Mrs. Rabes. So thank you, Mrs. Rabes, for your contribution. And now we award our winners in this afternoon's debate, the Convent High School, Miss Williams and Miss Leblanc. Thank you. And also our coaches who have graced us with their time, our judges, sorry, who have graced us with their time and effort this afternoon. Miss Janae Jackson, please accept a token of our appreciation. Mr. Brenton Hilaire. And Mr. Cody Jean-Jacques. Thank you so much, judges. Thank you so much to our debaters. Thank you so much to our audience, to our listeners online and on radio, and of course to the Dominica State College Literary and Debating Society students who are present here today to help, and the people in the committee of the Intersecondary Schools Debating Competition. My mother, I want to, because I like to talk, I'll just say this, the last thing. I want to acknowledge the importance of parents in this whole experience. I see we have parents this afternoon, and this is always critical. My mother is here this afternoon. She was there 24 years ago when I was debating, and I'm organizing now, and she's still there. So I just want to, highlight this. Yes, in debates for life. So I just want to, highlight the importance of that and really encourage, even people listening online to continue to support our students, in these endeavors. So thank you so much. I will list our sponsors once more. My mom is saying list the sponsors. I'll list our sponsors once more. Of course, Domlec, Lindomat, Fine Foods Inc., KFC, Q95 Radio, DBS Radio, thank you for the coverage this afternoon. UE Global Campus, Flow, Dominica, Freeman Consulting Group LLC has provided the consolation prizes this afternoon for the students. Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited, our brand of water for this competition is Trois Pitons and Quenchy soft drinks. So students, please don't leave without taking your drinks that have been sponsored by Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited. Dominica News Online, thank you for the coverage. Lovely Things, Finance Focus, Alliance Française de la Dominique, The Watering Can, Dr. Joshua Lloyd and Mrs. Carencia Lloyd, Vive Eye Care, Crazy Carrot, and the National Cooperative Credit Union. Thank you so much for your support, and good afternoon to everyone. Please, we'll see you, the Convent High School, we'll see you in round 2. The Wesley High School, we still want you to attend the debates. Round 2 comes up February 22nd and 23rd. So see you in round 2.